Welcome to Case Vault. Tonight, we begin a journey into one of the most haunting unsolved mysteries of the 20th century. 9 young hikers, full of life and adventure, set out on a skiing expedition into the frozen wilderness of the Ural Mountains in 1959. They were skilled, experienced, and prepared for the harsh conditions. Yet something unimaginable awaited them. Days later, rescuers would uncover a scene so bizarre, so terrifying, that it has baffled investigators, scientists, and conspiracy theorists for over 60 years. A tent ripped open from the inside, personal belongings strewn across the snow, bodies scattered across the frozen landscape, some barefoot and in temperatures below zero, and injuries that defied explanation. What really happened that night on the icy slopes of Kolatsyakal, the mountain of the dead? Was it a natural disaster, a secret military cover-up, or something far stranger? This is the story of the Dyatlov Pass Incident, your weekly dose of the darkest mysteries, unsolved crimes, and chilling stories that refuse to fade with time. Join us as we unlock the secrets of the universe, one terrifying case at a time. In the early hours of February, deep in the Ural Mountains, something strange was happening. In the isolated forest, 9 young Russian hikers had met an unexpected end. Their tent had been cut open from the inside, suggesting a frantic escape. But where everyone's tracks led away from the campsite and nobody had returned. This puzzling event is just the beginning of the bizarre tale of the Dyatlov Pass Incident. It was January 1959, the heart of a brutal Russian winter. The temperature was hovering around minus 34 degrees Celsius, and the wind chill made it feel much colder. 9 young hikers, all skilled mountaineers at the Ural Polytechnic Institute, were preparing for an ambitious skiing expedition into the icy wilderness of the northern Urals. The members of the group were Yuri Doroshenko, Zina Kolyada, Lyudmila Dubinina, Yuri Krivonishenko, Semyon Zolotaryov, Rustem Slobodiev, Yefim Chebover, Nikolai Thibault, and team leader Igor Dyatlov, all in their early 20s. Dyatlov was no ordinary young man. He was a confident, charismatic leader who exuded a can-do spirit. At just 23, he already had several mountain climbing certifications under his belt and had led multiple successful expeditions. On this trip, he was accompanied by 7 other men and 2 women, all of whom were as adventurous and enthusiastic as he was. Their spirits were high as they discussed their plans for the long weekend. They had chosen a challenging route, a test of skill and endurance through some of the most inhospitable terrain in the region. As the team geared up, they joked and sang, their laughter echoing through the crisp mountain air. Once everything was set, they set off, their skis cutting through the fresh snow. The group moved steadily and efficiently, their breath forming white clouds in the frigid air. They were well equipped for the harsh conditions. Thick jackets and fur hats were pulled tight against the biting wind, and goggles shielded their eyes from the glare. Despite the freezing temperatures, smiles were as visible as the frost on their breath. They were young, strong, and full of life, ready to conquer the challenge that lay before them. The beauty of the landscape was breathtaking. Towering, snow-covered trees formed a silent, solemn line, their branches heavy with hoar frost. The frozen lake shimmered like a sheet of polished steel under the pale winter sun, and the distant mountains were veiled in mist, adding a touch of mystery to the pristine wilderness. As the day wore on, the temperature continued to drop. By the time they set up camp for the night, it was minus 34 degrees Celsius, and the wind chill made it even colder. The group worked quickly and efficiently to get their tents erected and their supplies organized. Inside the tents, they huddled together for warmth, sharing stories and jokes while the blizzard raged outside. They were safe and warm in their little pocket of civilization amidst the vast, frozen wilderness. Over the next few days, the group continued their trek deeper into the Ural Mountains. They crossed frozen rivers, climbed snow-covered hills, and pushed on through the relentless cold. Their journey was not without its challenges. At one point, they had to ford a river, and when their ski boots became soaked, they had to take off their wet socks and put on dry ones. But such challenges only seemed to make the group more determined, and as they pressed on, their spirits remained high. By February, they had reached the northern slopes of Mount Oderten. Here, the terrain became more challenging and the weather took a turn for the worse. A thick fog rolled in, blanketing the mountains in an eerie silence. The group decided to make camp here. And so they did, erecting their tents once again and huddling together for warmth. It was here that the strange events that would become known as the Dyatlov Pass Incident began to unfold. On the morning of February, the group awoke to find that the temperature had dropped significantly overnight. Despite the bitter cold, they unzipped their tents and stepped out into the swirling fog. They were determined to reach the summit of Mount Otorten and make their way back to civilization. However, after several hours of trekking, they realized that due to the thick fog, they had no way of knowing whether they were on the right path or not. Concerned about losing their way, they decided to turn back. Upon reaching their camp, they discovered that their tents had been heavily damaged during the night. The zippers had been torn, the fabric ripped, and the poles bent. Not understanding how this could have happened in the middle of nowhere, they set about repairing their tents and gathering supplies for what was now a longer journey back home. As the fog continued to swirl around them, they started their trek back down the mountain. According to the testimonies of the two surviving members of the group, something strange was happening. The fog seemed to be getting thicker and the temperature colder. Then they noticed that the trees around them had been bending under the weight of the snow, forming a corridor through which they could hear a rushing sound. As they approached the sound, the rushing grew louder, eventually becoming the roar of a nearby avalanche. To escape the danger, they ran towards a rise in the ground, collapsing onto the soft snow. Here they waited until the avalanche passed, shielding themselves with their bodies to protect themselves from the falling snow. When the coast was clear, they got up and continued their descent. Soon they spotted their abandoned backpacks and unzipped them to retrieve their food, extra clothing, and cameras. As they made their way down the mountain, they realized that the backpacks were much lighter than they remembered. Upon checking, they found that some items were missing, including Dyatlov's camera. Now realizing the seriousness of their situation, they decided to ration their remaining food and supplies, determined to make it back to safety. They managed to reach a stream where they refilled their water bottles before continuing their journey. But as the hours passed, the temperatures continued to drop. The sky, which had been clear when they left camp, was now filled with dark clouds. Before long, heavy snow began to fall, making it difficult for them to see or navigate. In the failing light, they decided to set up camp for the night. They managed to erect one of their tents before nightfall, huddling inside with their meager supplies for warmth. During the night, the storm outside grew increasingly violent. The wind howled, the snow piled up, and the temperature plummeted. Inside the tent, they struggled to keep each other awake, afraid that sleep would mean hypothermia. But as dawn broke, they knew that help was not on the way. With the storm raging around them, they had no choice but to face the harsh reality of their situation. And then, the unthinkable happened. Around midday, the tent was violently cut open from the inside, tearing it apart. Startled and desperate, the group stumbled out of the tent and into the snowy wilderness. What had caused the tent to be cut open? Why were the others gone? They soon realized that Dyatlov and 4 others had already perished from hypothermia and exposure and had retreated into their tents. The rest of the group, driven by fear and desperation, had fled in different directions. Only 2 would survive the ordeal. When rescuers arrived at the scene, they found 8 bodies near the tent. All except Dyatlov showed signs of hypothermia and trauma, suggesting a struggle to escape the storm. Dyatlov's body, however, was found lying face down about 500 meters from the tent, dressed only in a shirt, pants, and socks. His boots and outer clothing were found nearby, as if removed before undressing. This perplexing state raised immediate questions. Why had he stripped off his clothes? Had he been injured? Was there more to his story? To make matters even more mysterious, 2 of the cameras recovered from the group contained haunting images taken shortly before their deaths. The photos showed the group dressed in heavy coats, trudging through knee-deep snow. Their faces glowed with hope and determination as they forged ahead, unaware that these cheerful snapshots would become their final memories, forever frozen in time. The remaining photos captured the harrowing moment when they huddled together for warmth, seeking solace in numbers. Little did they know that their fate would be sealed within the unforgiving wilderness of the Ural Mountains. As news of the incident spread, theories began to emerge, ranging from natural causes to more sinister possibilities. Some believed that the group had fallen victim to the extreme weather conditions, succumbing to hypothermia and exposure. Others speculated that they had been caught in an avalanche, trapped beneath the snow and unable to free themselves. Yet another theory suggested that the group had been deliberately targeted, their tents slashed, and their supplies stolen by unknown assailants. But as investigations progressed, it became evident that none of these theories could fully explain the strange circumstances surrounding the case. The Dyatlov Pass Incident remains one of the strangest mysteries of the 20th century. Despite numerous investigations and theories, no single explanation has been able to fully account for all the bizarre details of the case. The sudden and inexplicable death of 8 out of 9 experienced hikers, the strange condition of their bodies, the damaged tents, and the missing items continue to baffle experts and enthusiasts alike. Some believe that the group was caught in a sudden and unexpected avalanche, which may explain the physical injuries found on some of the bodies and the absence of certain items. Others suggest that the group may have been exposed to unknown natural phenomena such as infrasound or ball lightning, which could have disoriented and terrified them, leading to a panicked escape from their tent. Still, others speculate that the group may have encountered something more sinister, such as a wild animal or even human assailants. One of the most enduring theories is that the group was deliberately attacked by Soviet soldiers who were conducting secret military tests in the area. This theory is supported by some of the physical evidence, such as the unusual position of Dyatlov's body and the fact that some of the cameras contained undeveloped film. However, there is no concrete proof to support this claim, and it remains just one of many possible explanations. Ultimately, the truth behind the Dyatlov Pass incident may never be known. The remote location, the harsh weather conditions, and the lack of physical evidence have made it difficult to piece together exactly what happened to the group. Despite the passage of time, the case continues to captivate the public imagination, and as new theories emerge, the mystery of the Dyatlov Pass incident shows no signs of fading. This is the terrifying story of what happened to the Dyatlov group. The year before, they had summited Otorten, a peak Dyatlov had long desired to climb. Their success there inspired them to push further. In the fall of 1958, the group prepared for an even greater challenge, a hike through some of the harshest conditions on Earth. Leaving behind the relative warmth and safety of their base camp, the group pushed deeper into the frozen wilderness. Their diary entries and photographs painted a vivid picture of their adventure. They wrote of bitter winds and aching muscles, of nights spent huddled together for warmth and the constant struggle against the elements. But the tone was cheerful. They cracked jokes in their notes, teasing one another and celebrating each small victory over the unforgiving terrain. There was little to disturb the serenity of their ordeal, except the haunting silence of the frozen landscape. By late January, they had reached the rugged slopes of Kolat-Syakhl, a name that in the Mansi language means Mountain of the Dead. Superstition clung to the place, but to these young explorers, it was simply the next challenge. 2 days later, on the morning of February 1st, 1959, they left the tree line and began climbing the bare, icy slope. Heavy snow and strong winds battered them, slowing their progress. And so as daylight faded, they chose to pitch their tent directly on the mountainside instead of returning to the forest for shelter. It was a puzzling choice. Some experts believe Igor Dyatlov wanted to practice camping on a slope for future expeditions. Others think they were simply exhausted and unwilling to lose ground by going back downhill. That night, the group crowded into a single large tent, their skis planted in the snow as support. Inside, they shared one last meal together, recorded a few more words in their diaries, and laughed in the flickering glow of their lantern. For anyone else, it would have seemed like a normal night, the weary relief of hikers settling in after a long day. But this was not a normal night. This was their last night alive. The tent, flapping in the icy wind, stood like a fragile dot against the vast white wilderness. Somewhere beyond that thin canvas wall, danger loomed, silent, unseen, and ready to strike. This is the terrifying story of the Dyatlov Group, a group of experienced Russian hikers who set out to conquer the Ural Mountains only to meet a mysterious and gruesome end. Join me as we explore the chilling details of this unsolved mystery that has captivated the world for over 6 decades. In the early 1950s, a group of like-minded individuals led by the charismatic and experienced mountaineer Igor Dyatlov began exploring the Ural Mountains. The group, which included Zina Kolya-Denisova, Yuri Krivonishenko, Lyudmila Dubinina, Yekaterina Zolotaeva, Nikolai Thibault, Semyon Zolotarev, Yuri Doroshenko, and Alexander Kolovatov, quickly gained a reputation for their daring adventures and camaraderie. However, with time, their ambitions grew and they set their sights on conquering the treacherous Otorten Mountain, a challenging peak that had previously been thought to be unconquerable. After months of preparation and training, the group set out on their journey in the summer of 1957. Despite the harsh weather conditions and difficult terrain, the group pressed on, fueled by their determination to succeed. Their hard work and perseverance paid off when they finally reached the summit of Otorten, a moment of triumph that solidified their status as true adventurers. But their adventures were cut short when the group was forced to return home due to the onset of winter. Though disappointed, the group took solace in their successful climb and the promise of new adventures to come. Little did they know that their next journey would be their last. Upon their return, the group wasted no time in preparing for their next adventure. Eager to continue exploring the Ural Mountains, they set out on a journey to the nearby Kholat-Syakhl Mountain, also known as the Mountain of the Dead, a name that foreshadowed the grim fate that awaited them. Despite the ominous name, the group was undeterred and excited to take on the challenge. As the group made their way through the snowy landscape, they encountered harsh weather conditions, including heavy snow, strong winds, and freezing temperatures. But they pressed on, determined to reach their destination. On January 25, 1959, they reached the western slope of the Kholat-Syakhl and set up camp. The group's spirits were high, and they were eager to begin their ascent. However, on January 26, the group made a decision that would change everything. Instead of continuing their ascent or returning to the previous camp, they decided to set up camp at an altitude of 1,000 meters on the southeastern slope of the Kholat-Syakhl, a spot that was not considered suitable for camping due to its exposure to avalanches and rockfall. This decision baffled search and rescue teams and experts alike, as it went against all logic and reason. But the group was adamant about their decision, and they pressed on with their plan. On January, the group made their way to the tent, and everything appeared to be normal. However, when the search and rescue team arrived at the scene, they found a strange sight. The tent was ripped open, and the sleeping bags of all 9 group members were found unzipped outside the tent, with only 3 of them fully dressed. The remaining 6 were only partially dressed, which raised questions about what had caused such a commotion in the middle of the night. Despite the bizarre circumstances, the search and rescue team continued their search for the missing group members. On February 2nd, they discovered the bodies of Zinaida Kolya-Denisova and Yuri Krivonishenko near the tent site. The 2 hikers had suffered severe injuries, including a broken leg and head trauma, which suggested that they had tried to flee from something. But what could have caused such fear in the middle of the night? As the investigation continued, more clues emerged that painted a chilling picture of what had transpired on that fateful night. The group's belongings were found scattered around the tent site, suggesting a hasty retreat, and the autopsy reports revealed that all 9 group members had died from hypothermia, which contradicted the evidence of a struggle. How could a group of experienced hikers die from hypothermia when their sleeping bags were found unzipped and outside the tent? With no clear answers, the authorities intervened and an official investigation was launched. The findings of the investigation were kept under tight wraps, leading to widespread speculation and rumors about what had really happened to the Dyatlov group. Some believed that the group had been the victim of a man-made disaster, while others suspected that they had encountered a wild animal attack. However, none of these theories could fully explain the evidence that was available. One of the most perplexing aspects of the case is the behavior of the group in the days leading up to their deaths. Their diary entries and photographs showed a group of happy and excited hikers who were eager to explore the wilderness. There was no indication that they were afraid or threatened by anything they had encountered. Additionally, the group's decision to camp at an inappropriate location and the strange state of their bodies and belongings on the morning of February 1st baffled search and rescue teams. A seasoned guide who examined the site concluded that if a violent avalanche had struck the tent, it would have dragged the group down the slope. However, the bodies were found near the tent, suggesting that whatever had happened to them occurred close to where they had set up camp. Another puzzling aspect of the case is the lack of any evidence of a struggle other than the injuries sustained by Krivonyshenko and Denisova. All 9 group members died from hypothermia, which suggests that they had been outside the tent for an extended period of time. But if they had realized the danger they were in and made a run for it, why didn't they fully dress themselves before leaving the tent? Despite the lack of concrete evidence, various theories have been proposed to explain the Dyatlov incident. One popular theory is that the group was caught in an unexpected avalanche that tore open their tent and exposed them to the freezing temperatures. Another theory is that the group was attacked by a group of hungry wolves, causing them to flee the tent in terror. However, none of these theories can fully account for all the evidence in the case. For instance, Yekaterina Zolotayeva's diary entries contained no mention of wolves, and a wolf attack would likely have left behind more evidence of a struggle. Additionally, the group's tent was found ripped open from the inside, suggesting that whatever happened, it was not an outside force that caused their deaths. Another theory is that the group was affected by a rare medical condition called hypovolemic shock, which causes the blood vessels to become leaky, leading to a rapid drop in blood pressure and eventually death. This theory is supported by the fact that all 9 group members died from hypothermia, and the symptoms of hypovolemic shock can include confusion and disorientation, which could explain why the group abandoned their belongings and failed to fully dress themselves before leaving the tent. However, the exact cause of hypovolemic shock remains unknown, and it's unclear whether it could have been triggered by the harsh conditions that the group was facing. Despite the numerous theories, the Dyatlov incident remains officially unsolved, and the true cause of the group's deaths may never be known. Over the years, the Dyatlov incident has captured the attention of countless researchers, amateur sleuths, and thrill seekers who are fascinated by the mystery surrounding the group's deaths. Some believe that the group encountered a creature from folklore, such as a werewolf, while others believe that they were the victims of an extraterrestrial encounter. However, there is no evidence to support any of these outlandish theories. The Dyatlov Pass Incident serves as a reminder of the unpredictable nature of the wilderness and the importance of being prepared for any situation. Even for experienced adventurers, the harsh conditions and unforgiving terrain of the Ural Mountains can be a dangerous combination. Despite the tragedy, the legacy of the Dyatlov group lives on, inspiring awe and respect for the power of nature and the resilience of the human spirit. The group's story has been told and retold through books, documentaries, and films, and their names continue to be whispered by adventurers who brave the treacherous peaks of the Ural Mountains. When we think of dangerous animals, our minds conjure up images of flesh-eating predators or venomous snakes. But some of the most fearsome creatures aren't wild beasts at all, but our own species. What happened to these 9 Russian hikers could be one of the creepiest human stories of all time. So buckle up and prepare to delve into a tale where the line between human and beast may blur. But first, we have to go back to the beginning. In the late 1950s, the Soviet Union was a hotbed of adventure. And for many university students, exploring the rugged landscapes of the Ural Mountains was a rite of passage. Among them were 9 friends from Yuri's Polytechnic Institute in the Urals, Yegor Dyatlov, the seasoned leader with dreams of becoming a polar explorer, his girlfriend, Zinaida Kolmogorova, a skilled skier known for her adventurous spirit, Lyudmila Dubinina, a dedicated athlete and nurse, and her boyfriend, Rustem Slobodin, a mountaineer who wanted to conquer new heights. Then there was Nikolai Thibault, a quiet, shy student whose love for nature was matched only by his determination to overcome personal challenges, Yuri Krivonishenko, a charismatic figure known for his quick thinking and leadership skills, Semyon Zolotaryov, the joker of the group, always ready with a joke or a playful prank, and finally, Yuri Doroshenko and Alexander Kolovatov, 2 friends who shared a passion for skiing and exploration. They were an unlikely band of explorers, united by their thirst for discovery and camaraderie. Their journey began on January 1959, when the group set out from the town of Ivdel. 3 days later, they arrived at the small village of Vijay, where they registered with the authorities before venturing deeper into the snow-laden mountains. Their destination, a ski resort nestled in the secluded Dyatlov Pass, nearly 30 miles from Vijay. According to the group's plan, they would spend a week skiing, hiking, and experiencing the untamed beauty of the winter wilderness. Upon reaching their camp, the group set up their tent and divided tasks. Sloboda and Krivonishenko went outside to chop wood, while Dyatlov and the rest gathered around a stove to boil water and prepare dinner. After eating, the group engaged in various activities. Kolmogorova worked on a painting, Dubinin and Thibault read books, while Doroshenko, Kolovatov, and Zolotaryov played checkers. Dyatlov, however, couldn't shake a nagging feeling of unease about the location of their tent. At around 10 p.m., he suggested moving it to a safer spot away from the cedar trees. The group agreed, and after packing their belongings, they set off for a nearby clearing around 11 p.m. Once settled in their new location, they played cards and chatted until midnight, when sleep began to pull at their eyelids. The sky was clear, the snow sparkling under the soft glow of the moonlight. As the night deepened, the temperature plunged, dropping to a bone-chilling 5 degrees Fahrenheit. The group huddled together for warmth, sharing their blankets until dawn painted the eastern sky with hues of pink. As the day progressed, they set off on skis to explore the area. Kolmogorova, despite feeling unwell, joined them. The group skied to the edge of the pass, marveling at the beauty of the surrounding mountains before turning back towards the familiar white expanse of their tent. When they returned, however, their carefree joy turned to horror. The tent was mangled, its canvas torn open as if attacked by a wild animal. But what truly sent chills down their spines was that the tent's zipper had been cut from the inside. The hikers exchanged worried glances. Could an animal strong enough to tear through canvas and steel cables have struck? Fear coiled in their stomachs as they unzipped the tent and stepped out into the cold embrace of the morning. The discovery inside was even more perplexing. Items were strewn around as if the tent's inhabitants had fled in haste. Warm clothing lay abandoned, their ski boots were left behind, and food lay untouched, suggesting a hasty departure. What had caused their sudden flight? Where were they now? Had they met with an accident or worse, fallen victim to something more sinister lurking in the mountain's heart? These questions echoed in their minds as they embarked on a search, retracing the steps of their vanished companions. The initial investigation revealed several disturbing details. First, there were no signs of a struggle outside the tent, indicating that whatever had occurred, it happened swiftly and unexpectedly. Second, a thorough examination of the tent's interior yielded no clues except for a single footprint near the entrance, which seemed too small to belong to any of their companions. Third, an inventory of the abandoned equipment provided strange insights. The backpacks were missing, but the tents lay undisturbed. Some items like matches, lighters, and axes were absent, while others like extra socks and cigarettes were left behind. Most unsettling was the discovery of a molar near the tent, which didn't belong to any of the hikers. This wasn't a random occurrence. There was method, perhaps madness to it. Was this a ritualistic offering to a hidden deity? Were they stalked by a deranged hermit? Or did they flee from something more grotesque, something that defies the bounds of rationality? Days passed, and the searchers found nothing but more questions. Dyatlov, Kolmogorova, Dubinin, Slobodin, Krivonishenko, and Tibio were nowhere to be seen. On February 26th, a search team discovered the first body, partially buried in snow. It was Krivonishenko, lying just below a cedar tree, his face covered in snow. Nearby, they found the body of Tibio, also near a tree, suggesting the men had sought refuge there, perhaps from the elements or a predator. Yet neither had shoes or shirts. Their pants were torn, and their skin was sunburnt. A few days later, searchers found Dyatlov, Kolmogorova, and Slobodin lying in a cluster near a fire site. All three were semi-clad, with their hands raw, suggesting a desperate attempt to keep warm. Why had they abandoned their tent in the middle of the night? What compelled them to flee without essential supplies, exposing themselves to the harsh elements? Did they flee from something or someone, or were they fleeing to somewhere or someplace? And what happened to the rest of the group? Why were their bodies found separately and so far from the tent? As the search intensified, more bodies were found. The last two victims, Doroshenko and Kolovatov, were discovered nearly a mile from the tent, their injuries shocking. X-rays revealed Doroshenko had a skull fracture, possibly caused by a heavy object, while Kolovatov's chest showed massive injuries, akin to those sustained in a car crash. But what could have inflicted such trauma in the remote wilderness? And why were they so far from the group? Did they wander off during the night, or were they assaulted and left for dead? Among the most disturbing discoveries was a report from a witness who claimed to have seen 6 skiers near the group's tent around 1 a.m. on February. They seemed disturbed, racing through the forest at breakneck speed. Could they be the missing skiers? Had they encountered something so terrifying that they fled into the night? In the aftermath of the tragedy, a total of 368 people participated in the search efforts. Despite the scale of the investigation, the case took a bizarre turn. The official investigation concluded that the group had died due to a cornice collapse, a geological event in which a slab of snow breaks off a mountainside. However, this explanation was challenged by the forensic evidence. Dr. Maxim Samoylov, who examined the bodies, noted that their clothing was torn and their skin was burnt, not consistent with a snow burial. He believed they had been exposed to extremely low temperatures for an extended period. Furthermore, one victim, Yuri Krivonishenko, had a fractured skull, a finding not compatible with a simple fall. Rumors swirled that the hikers had encountered secret military testing, strange lights in the sky, paranormal phenomena, or even an avalanche. Yet none of these theories could fully explain the horrifying ordeal that befell these young explorers. The Dyatlov Pass Incident continues to captivate and terrify us. Perhaps the true horrors of that icy wilderness will remain shrouded in mystery forever. On February 2, 1968, experienced guide Yuri Krivonishenko led 9 young tourists on a challenging trek near the northwest shore of the mysterious Dyatlov Pass. Their goal, a rare adventure in the remote, barely charted wilderness of the northern Ural Mountains. All of them were officers in the Soviet paramilitary ski patrol, seasoned travelers eager to conquer new frontiers. But by the time sunset painted the rugged peaks in hues of purple, 4 members had dropped out due to fatigue and hunger. 5 continued, including Yuri, but he would soon follow his companions, succumbing to exhaustion, and leaving the final 2, Zinaida Kolmogorova and her boyfriend, Semyon Zolotarev, to complete the hike alone. They pushed onward until around 9 p.m. when they decided to pitch camp on a clearing near a stream and settled into their tent for the night. At least that's what the plan was. When rescue workers reached the site 2 days later, they found them dead inside the tent along with 5 other members who had joined them on the second day. 9 young hikers dead under such bizarre circumstances. Investigators scrambled for answers. First, the facts. The group was experienced, well-equipped, and dressed in warm layers for the harsh conditions. The weather that night was mild, just 2 degrees Celsius above zero, far from the life-threatening temperatures that can plummet to 40 degrees Celsius in the region. Plus, recent snowfall made the going easy. So why had anyone chosen to stay outside in such clement weather? And if they had done so, why were they all found fully clothed with supplies like food and water nearby? The official inquiry considered the most obvious explanation first: an avalanche. Perhaps the group heard the rumble of snow shifting above and cut their way out of the tent to escape. In their panic, they fled down the slope without their clothing or supplies, only to freeze to death in the bitter cold. But this theory quickly unraveled. The slope was too shallow, and no signs of a major avalanche were ever found. The tent, though partially collapsed, was still upright, and belongings inside were undisturbed. If an avalanche had occurred, everything should have been swept away. Another explanation was hypothermia and paradoxical undressing, a phenomenon where freezing victims tear off their clothes in confusion. Yet this did not account for the broken ribs, shattered skulls, or the missing tongue. Something far stranger seemed to be at play. Rumors spread of panic in the night. Perhaps a violent quarrel erupted within the group, leading to chaos. Or maybe they heard terrifying sounds in the wilderness and ran for their lives. But there were no signs of a struggle inside the tent. Then came details that fueled decades of speculation. Traces of radiation were found on some of the hikers' clothing. This piqued the interest of the Soviet military, which classified the incident and sealed the evidence. What was supposed to be a routine investigation turned into a race to cover up a potential catastrophe, further muddying the waters. Years after the event, one investigator would reveal what he saw at the scene. As he stood by the tent, he noticed small pebbles scattered around, suggesting the ground had been disturbed by heavy objects dragged across it. Inside, 3 bodies lay near the entrance, while the other 6 were huddled in the corner. Those closest to the door had cuts on their forearms, palms, and faces, almost as if they had tried to claw their way out. But the cuts were strangely neat, lacking the jagged edges of a desperate fight. One man had teeth marks on his shoulder. A woman in the corner had defensive wounds on her arms and legs. She also had a weird rope burn mark on her neck. Whoever attacked her had held her down from behind. The body that had the most injuries was a 23-year-old woman lying on her side near the opening. Her face was covered in rope burns, and she bore deep wounds on both legs and arms. Next to her, a man was sprawled face down with a rope burn around his neck. His hands were also injured, as if he had tried to free himself from restraints. Finally, the couple who had set up the tent, Zinaida and Semyon, were found in the corner. Strangely, they showed no signs of struggle, apart from a rope burn on Zinaida's neck. Autopsy reports noted unusual features: skin with a strange orange hue, hair appearing bleached, and in one case, eyes and a tongue missing. One victim, Lyudmila Dubinina, had strange markings on her chest and back, resembling the human skeleton. The radiation traces on their clothes were now confirmed as fallout from nuclear fallout. This was a full-scale disaster, yet the Soviet authorities announced that no disaster had occurred. This stunned the families, who demanded answers. Within weeks, the narrative shifted. Reports stated that the hikers had perished from acute mountain sickness, complicated by physical exertion and bad weather. It sounded plausible, except that no symptoms of altitude sickness had been reported. Plus, modern research indicates that even if they had experienced mountain sickness, it wouldn't have caused their injuries. Years passed, and stories leaked out. Eyewitnesses reported seeing helicopters searching the area days before the group went missing. Was the military conducting secret tests that frightened the hikers? Had an avalanche struck after all? Or was there something more sinister at play? Speculation swirled around tales of cannibalism, although this is unlikely since none of the bodies showed signs of missing flesh. When Soviet scientist Boris Medvedev learned of the investigation in 1978, he offered a radical thought. What if the group encountered an unusually shaped boulder that radiated deadly gamma rays? He imagined a huge piece of radioactive space debris crashing into the mountain, killing anyone close enough to touch it. The remaining heat from the impact might have melted their eyeballs and caused the radiation burns. But this theory failed to explain all the injuries, plus any gamma ray burst would have affected much of northern Russia. In 1991, when the Soviet Union fell and the case files were opened to the public, more pieces of the puzzle emerged. Forensic expert Lev Rubinstein concluded that Zenaida had been strangled and the others beaten to death. Traces of radiation were found in the soil around the tent, as well as on the ice beneath it. Any nearby bodies had decomposed, making further evidence impossible to recover. In 2019, researchers used new computer models to determine that the radiation traces on the clothing corresponded to a point source, something small enough to fit in a person's hand. This ruled out Medvedev's space rock hypothesis. Could there really be something sinister behind the deaths of these young hikers? Or are we always seeking a deeper meaning where there is none? Fast forward to 2023, when DNA analysis finally identified the remains, providing closure to families after decades. But it did little to solve the mystery. How did this group perish in the wilderness? One prevailing theory blames a so-called cryokinetic event, which has no scientific basis. But the idea fits with witness reports of an orange glow over the mountain and a deafening roar that could be heard miles away. Could the mysterious energy burst from the mountain have frozen the surrounding air, causing an instant lethal hypothermic reaction? But this doesn't explain the physical injuries, the struggle, the radiation. A potential clue may lie in the very location of the tragedy. Locals called the area Dyatlov Pass, after the group whose unsolved 1959 disaster inspired the 2020 film with the same name. In the original event, 9 experienced skiers traversed a remote region of the Ural Mountains. One morning, they were found dead outside their tent, seemingly fleeing in terror. Yet the tent showed no signs of forced entry. An official investigation blamed an avalanche, but this did not explain the injuries or the lack of snow on the slopes. Years later, new theories arose. Perhaps a local tribesman seeking revenge for his reindeer killed the group, but this was ruled out by forensic experts. Another suggestion pointed to a cornice, a slab of snow hanging off a cliff ledge. Maybe it collapsed suddenly, startling the campers who then panicked and ran into the forest, but this doesn't account for the state of the bodies or the radiation traces. Could there really be a link between the two cases separated by 9 years? Both incidents happened in areas known for strange occurrences. Before the 1959 group ventured out, a herder warned them not to go because unexplainable events had been happening in the mountains. These included tents being cut open, animals found dead without a trace, and unexplained radiation levels. When they did find the group, they were facing away from the tent, and their ski boots were filled with stones. It seems like they were running away from something. The 1968 group, meanwhile, had their own ominous omen. While passing through a village, locals told them not to go to the cursed Dyatlov Pass. Days later, When rescuers arrived at the site, they also noticed the strange alignment of the bodies. Is there something sinister lurking in the desolate beauty of the Urals? The answer might lie buried beneath the snow. Yet the enduring mystery continues to captivate, reminding us that even in the 21st century, there are places on Earth where science cannot explain what haunts the lonely peaks. In the heart of winter, perhaps there are forces beyond our understanding waiting. In the aftermath of the Dyatlov tragedy, as whispers of what really happened echoed through the corridors of power, one theory gained powerful traction. The Soviet military knew more than they were willing to admit. The year before, the U.S. had successfully tested its first hydrogen bomb on the remote island of Runit Island in the Marshall Islands. But it wasn't just the Americans who were advancing their weapons capabilities. The Soviets, too, were in a race against time, pouring millions into developing new and terrifying technologies. It was no secret they were conducting tests in the barren wilderness of northern Russia and the wind-swept plains of Kazakhstan. But now there were rumors that the Ural Mountains, a majestic yet inhospitable range, had become the new frontier of Soviet experimentation. These mountains were a world away from the bustling cities, a realm of frost-covered peaks and dense, dark woods, a place where secrets could be kept and unwanted eyes averted. For the Soviet military, it was the perfect place to push the boundaries of destructive science without prying eyes, or so they thought. Because nestled in the heart of this icy expanse, far from the watchful gaze of the world, was the perfect testing ground. And when Yuri Yudin and his fellow hikers turned toward Kholat-Syakhl, they unknowingly walked into a nightmare. Whispers soon turned to shouts. Some investigators came to believe the hikers hadn't died from hypothermia, but had been obliterated by a force so powerful it literally crushed them from within. One survivor recalled the haunting sight. "I saw the bodies lying as if someone had thrown them out of an airplane. Some were lying face down with their clothes torn off. Some were lying face up with their mouths open and their limbs scattered around them. Among them was the young and robust Zina Kolodinkova, her body bearing the marks of a violent and mysterious demise. Her ribs were shattered, her internal organs ruptured, but her external wounds were minimal, almost negligible. Similarly, Yuri Doroshov, the group's cook, was found with a skull crushed as though by a giant's hammer, yet his head bore no mark of the catastrophic blow. It was as if their bodies had been ravaged from within, a horrifying tableau of what can only be described as massive internal decapitation. Their injuries were not consistent with falling, stumbling, or being crushed by an avalanche. They were the makings of something sinister, something unnatural, something explosive. One investigator pointed his finger at the Soviet military's newest and most terrifying creation, the parachute mine. These silent but deadly devices were dropped from aircraft, detonating just above the surface of the Earth with a devastating shockwave. Imagine the hikers unknowingly walking into the path of such a device. The initial explosion wouldn't harm them, but the sudden and intense pressure change, well, that could cause massive internal damage, shattering bones and rupturing organs, leaving the outside of the body relatively unharmed. At the time, the military had been testing various parachute mines near the Predpolygamum site of the Dyatlov hikers' camp. Perhaps an unlucky hiker stepped on one, setting off the fatal blast. When the Soviet officials learned of the tragedy, they wasted no time in launching their own investigation. They dispatched two pathologists, Dr. Maxim A. Isakov and Dr. B.P. Gvishiani, to conduct autopsies on the deceased hikers. The doctors examined the bodies, studied the injuries, and prepared detailed reports. But as fate would have it, the autopsy reports revealed nothing conclusive. The injuries were too extensive, too unusual to be attributed to any single cause. The doctors could not provide definitive answers, leaving the true cause of death a haunting enigma. As the investigators dug deeper, a chilling theory began to take shape. What if the hikers had stumbled upon something they weren't supposed to see? Paranoia and political climate of the era meant that ordinary citizens were often wary of sharing information with outsiders. People lived in fear of being labeled as enemies of the state, making it challenging for investigators to gather crucial information. Despite these challenges, one piece of evidence stood out. Some of the hikers' clothing showed traces of radiation, suggesting exposure to an unusual source. Yet the official records made no mention of this anomaly. As the years passed, more whispers surfaced. Eyewitnesses came forward claiming to have seen strange lights and heard deafening booms in the weeks leading up to the tragedy. Some even spoke of seeing military trucks racing away from the area, their cargo a mystery. What if the hikers had unwittingly trespassed into a restricted zone? What if they had witnessed something that threatened national security? In a climate of secrecy and fear, one possibility emerged. The hikers might have been silenced. Soviet authorities wasted no time in containing the narrative surrounding the Dyatlov tragedy. They quickly assembled a team to conduct an investigation and establish a cause of death. Within days, the group concluded that the hikers had perished due to a combination of exhaustion, disorientation, and hypothermia. The evidence was presented in a report, the findings carefully worded to steer clear of any controversial or sensitive details. External examinations of the bodies revealed no significant injuries except for some minor cuts and bruises consistent with a fall. The report stated that these external findings did not provide any clues as to the cause of death. Internal examinations, however, revealed a different and disturbing story. Several of the hikers had suffered internal injuries, broken ribs, and punctured lungs. But here's the perplexing part. There were no corresponding external wounds. It was as if their bodies had been ravaged from the inside out. The autopsy report attempted to explain these injuries as being caused by the hikers' desperate attempts to escape the forest, suggesting that they may have been disoriented and injured themselves while running through the undergrowth. This explanation, however, left many questions unanswered. Why had some of the hikers' bodies been found with their clothes torn apart? Why had others been lying in unnatural positions, as if tossed aside carelessly? And why did the injuries seem so consistent with an explosion that they brought back memories of a similar case from a few years prior, a case involving a British pilot named Francis Guy Gibson, whose plane had exploded mid-air during the Second World War? The official explanation offered by the Soviet authorities was that exhaustion and disorientation had driven the hikers to climb onto the frozen surface of a lake in an attempt to get their bearings. Somehow, this, they claimed, led to a massive snowslide which buried and suffocated the group. But this theory left more questions than it answered. Snowslides typically occur on slopes, and the group had been found on relatively flat terrain. Moreover, the injuries sustained by the victims were not consistent with being trapped under snow. The idea that exhaustion and disorientation, common symptoms of hypothermia, could somehow lead to the bizarre set of circumstances that resulted in the deaths of 9 experienced outdoorsmen seemed far-fetched. As the official narrative took shape, so did the suspicion that the Soviet authorities were more interested in controlling the story than uncovering the truth. Eyewitnesses who came forward with tales of strange lights and explosions in the sky were dismissed as unreliable. Any mention of radiation was scrubbed from the official record, and the autopsy reports were sealed, hidden from public view for decades. What the Soviet authorities wanted the world to hear was that the deaths were a tragic accident, a cautionary tale about the unforgiving wilderness, a wilderness that had claimed the lives of 9 innocent hikers. But as the years went by, doubts lingered. Were these 9 individuals truly victims of circumstance, or had they inadvertently stumbled upon something they were never meant to find? Was their deaths merely a tragic accident, or a carefully orchestrated cover-up? To this day, the enigmatic circumstances surrounding the Dyatlov tragedy continue to fuel speculation and debate. The official account, with its focus on natural causes, fails to address the more sinister possibilities. The notion that the hikers might have been silenced for witnessing something they shouldn't have seen remains a haunting thought, and the sealed case files, along with the missing autopsy details, do little to quell the flames of suspicion. Perhaps the truth lies buried somewhere in the frozen wastes of the Ural Mountains, lost forever or deliberately concealed by the shifting sands of history. Now, we don't know what you're thinking right now. Maybe you have your own theories about this case, so let me know in the comment section down below. We want to hear from you. Also, if you've watched till now, thank you very much. We appreciate your support. Deep in the frigid Ural Mountains in 1959, 9 experienced Soviet hikers met their demise under mysterious circumstances. The incident became known as the Dyatlov Pass Incident. When investigators arrived at the scene, they found 2 crucial pieces of evidence. One was the corpse of one of the hikers lying near the tent. The other was the tent itself, ripped open from the inside. This evidence was so baffling that investigators could not come up with a plausible scenario that would explain both of them together. They needed a big dramatic explanation for a big dramatic mystery. So what they came up with was a phrase so vague it might as well have been made up, a natural force. But we now know that phrase was a cop-out. So let's take a look at some actual scary potential causes of the disaster. Before we get started, let me tell you about today's sponsor. In the decades since its launch, CuriosityStream has become my go-to service for high-quality documentaries. Whether you're into true crime, nature, science, history, or anything in between, CuriosityStream has something for everyone. In fact, I recently watched this documentary which dives into a topic that's fascinated me for years: ancient alien theory. I always enjoy learning more about the theories that attempt to explain some of humanity's greatest mysteries. But what I love most about CuriosityStream is that you can watch something new every single day, like this hilarious series featuring some of the most ridiculous medical procedures ever performed. And with so much great content to choose from, it's easy to find the perfect documentary for any mood. Plus, when you sign up today using my exclusive link, you'll get CuriosityStream for over 26% off. So for less than $15 a year, you'll get unlimited access to some of the best documentaries in the world. So don't wait. Click the link in the description below to save on CuriosityStream today. Thanks again to CuriosityStream for sponsoring this episode. Now let's get back to the video. The lack of a more concrete explanation for the Dyatlov Pass incident has allowed speculation to run wild. What if the hikers had been unlucky enough to stumble upon a secret military experiment, an alien crash site, or even a mythical beast? Today, let's explore 3 strange and terrifying theories that could explain what really happened at Dyatlov Pass. Orbs witnessed in the night sky. When news of the tragedy reached the outside world, several residents of nearby villages came forward to report strange sightings that they'd assumed were unrelated to the tragedy. Some witnesses claimed they saw mysterious glowing lights drifting silently through the night sky above the Ural Mountains during the early hours of February 2, 1959. Others reported seeing a fiery sphere streaking across the darkness, leaving behind a white vapor trail. These accounts of unidentified flying objects were initially dismissed by investigators. It wasn't until decades later that UFO researchers began to take an interest in the case, suggesting that the group may have encountered a crashed UFO and extraterrestrial survivors in the remote wilderness. In the context of the Cold War, such a discovery could have been disastrous, potentially sparking global panic. Given the secrecy surrounding UFOs at the time, it's entirely plausible that authorities chose to ignore these reports in order to avoid mass hysteria. Could the mysterious orbs witnessed over the Ural Mountains have been extraterrestrial in origin? And if so, did they play a role in the hikers' demise? Infrasound. While UFOs may seem like a fantastical explanation for the disaster, there is another, perhaps more scientific possibility: infrasound. The idea was first put forward by British scientist John C. H. Jones in 1966. He noted that fierce winds sweeping over the mountain slopes could have created low-frequency vibrations while the hikers were sleeping. Despite being inaudible to the human ear, these vibrations could have caused panic, disorientation, and irrational behavior. Low-frequency sound waves have been known to induce feelings of anxiety and unease, causing some people to experience shortness of breath, nausea, or even seizures. While it is possible that the hikers may have been driven to flee their tent by such an unseen force, it does not explain the more gruesome aspects of the tragedy. While the infrasound theory offers a potential explanation for the hikers' unusual behavior, it falls short when confronted with the more disturbing details of the case, such as the bizarre injuries sustained by the deceased. Could there be another, more sinister force at play? The Yeti. While infrasound may not account for the bizarre injuries sustained by the victims, there is another popular theory that attempts to explain it all: the Yeti. The Yeti, also known as the Abominable Snowman, is a legendary creature said to inhabit the Himalayan mountains. Despite numerous alleged sightings and a significant amount of folklore surrounding the beast, there is no conclusive evidence of its existence. However, some believe that the Dyatlov Pass hikers may have encountered this very creature during their trek through the Ural Mountains. Conspiracy enthusiasts point to a series of photographs recovered from the hikers' cameras that seem to show a large, dark, hairy figure in the snow. Though the images are grainy and often contradictory, they have done little to quell speculation about the possibility of a Yeti sighting. While the vast majority of people dismiss the photographs as nothing more than a blurry, perhaps even staged hoax, some argue that they provide compelling evidence of a snowbound predator stalking the hikers in the night. Could the Dyatlov Pass Incident have been the first documented encounter between humans and one of the world's most elusive creatures? Or are the pictures nothing more than a hoax, a desperate attempt to explain the unexplainable? The reality may never be known. The official verdict: a natural force. In the face of these outlandish theories, it may seem ludicrous to consider the official conclusion advanced by investigators at the time. But in many ways, it is just as chilling. The cause of death officially recorded for all 9 hikers was a natural force. This enigmatic explanation offered no insight into the series of events that unfolded, leaving many questions unanswered. Why was the tent cut open from the inside? How did the hikers sustain their bizarre injuries? And why were some found fully clothed while others were not? The ambiguity of the natural force verdict only serves to heighten the sense of mystery surrounding the case. By failing to provide any concrete answers, investigators left the door open for speculation and conspiracy theories to run rampant. The truth is, without further evidence, it's impossible to say definitively what caused the Dyatlov Pass tragedy. Perhaps the hikers were victims of a freak weather event, a phenomenon so rare and bizarre that conventional science is unable to explain it. Maybe they stumbled upon a secret military test, becoming unwitting casualties of a top-secret government project. Or maybe something more sinister was at play, a malevolent force that remains hidden in the shadows of the Ural Mountains. While the official verdict of natural force may offer a neat and tidy conclusion, it does little to satisfy those seeking answers. The truth is, the Dyatlov Pass incident remains one of the greatest mysteries of the 20th century, a chilling reminder that sometimes the most terrifying explanations are the ones we can't see. For decades, the Dyatlov Pass case remained a cold mystery, its files sealed, its truth buried beneath snow and speculation. But in 2019, the Russian authorities announced the case would be reopened. Families of the victims, journalists, and researchers hoped that modern science might finally provide the answers that had eluded investigators for 60 years. In February of 1959, 9 experienced hikers set out to explore the northern slopes of Otorten Mountain in the Ural Mountains. Within days, the group reached the remote and beautiful pass later named Dyatlov, in honor of their charismatic leader, Igor Dyatlov. There, they pitched their tent and prepared to settle in for the night. The following morning, they were found dead. It sounds like the setup to a scary story, but it's actually the opening to one of the strangest mysteries of the 20th century. On February 2nd, the group awoke to find temperatures as low as 40 degrees Fahrenheit, well below freezing. Though unusually cold, the weather was hardly unseasonable. Experienced outdoorsmen, the hikers should have been well equipped for such a challenge, and indeed, the group decided to press on with their trek rather than stay put in camp. But after a few hours, they returned to the tent, apparently seeking shelter from the harsh elements. By late afternoon, the group made a second and fateful decision. They abandoned their tent and fled into the night. As dawn broke, rescuers found the hikers' tent half submerged in a nearby ravine. Only 2 bodies were discovered that day. One of the men lay face down in the snow. His ski boots were neatly placed side by side as if he'd taken off his skis before lying down. He wore only 1 sock, 1 glove, and 1 shoe. The other man found that day was lying on his back. His clothing was buttoned up and his belongings lay strewn about him. In the morning light, the scene looked bizarre. What had caused these men to abandon their camp in the middle of the night? What had they feared so much? And why had they discarded their warm clothes and most of their gear? As the rescuers descended into the ravine, they found the answers they were seeking, and yet they weren't the answers they expected. The next day, 3 more bodies were recovered from the ravine. It became clear that all 9 members of the group had perished. 6 had died outside the tent and 3 inside. Some had suffered serious injuries, including head trauma, as if they'd been mowed down by some unseen force. Others showed no signs of trauma, but had succumbed to hypothermia. The hikers' personal belongings were collected from the site, but not before one curious detail was noted. Strange orange stains covered some of the corpses. For weeks, Soviet officials provided little information about the tragedy. The families of the deceased knew something terrible had happened, but they didn't know what. Rumors spread quickly. Had the hikers been murdered? Were they the victims of a secret weapons test gone awry? Did a rogue Yeti lie behind the tragedy? Today, we still don't have definitive answers. But thanks to forensic advances since 1959, we do have a better idea of what happened at Dyatlov Pass. In 1961, 2 separate investigations attempted to piece together the events of that fateful night. The first investigation found no evidence of foul play. Their conclusion, the group had been trapped in an avalanche. Yet despite their best efforts, this explanation left many holes. The slope where the tent was pitched was shallow and stable. There was no indication that an avalanche had occurred. Moreover, the tent itself remained partially standing. If tons of snow had come crashing down, it was hard to imagine how so much of the tent could remain upright. Nevertheless, the investigation remained unsatisfied. The 6 missing bodies were never found. The case was closed with no official cause of death, and the evidence left behind was sealed away in government archives. For decades, Dyatlov Pass became a touchstone for conspiracy theorists. In 1978, a journalist revisited the site and published his own theory. According to him, the hikers had been caught in a snowslide, but not a large one. Instead, a thin layer of snow had slid down the hill, catching the tent in its path. Fearing that a larger slide might follow, the hikers cut open the tent and fled. They ran into the forest without coats, hats, or gloves. Soon, they collapsed and froze to death. Over time, different theories emerged, each attempting to explain the gaps in the official narrative. Maybe the tent had been crushed by heavy stones dislodged by an earthquake. Perhaps the hikers had been incinerated by a military flare. Maybe they had been killed by an animal attack or a band of hostile locals. Maybe the strange orange staining on the bodies was caused by radiation poisoning, suggesting a nuclear accident. More than 50 years after the tragedy, we still don't have definitive answers. But that hasn't stopped us from trying. In 2019, Russia's investigative committee announced they would reopen the Dyatlov Pass case. They would exhume the bodies and analyze them for clues. This time, they said, they would only consider natural explanations. On September 23, 2021, the results were released to the public. According to the official report, Snow had collapsed onto the hikers' tent, forcing them to cut their way out and flee into the night. Disoriented and underdressed, they succumbed to hypothermia. Some, caught in the shifting snow, suffered fatal injuries. On the surface, this explanation seemed convincing. Avalanche injuries can resemble the wounds found on the Dyatlov hikers, and the temperature would have been deadly without proper clothing. Yet once again, the explanation left plenty of questions unanswered. For one, the slope where the tent was pitched was shallow and stable. It was unlikely to produce a sudden avalanche. Furthermore, the tent itself remained partially standing, a strange sight if tons of snow had come crashing down. The official investigation considered this conundrum but remained unconvinced. They argued that the tent's frame was reinforced with sticks and could support itself after being ripped open. They also pointed out that while the slope where the tent was pitched did not meet the criteria for a full-blown avalanche, small pockets of snow could have slid separately, causing localized but deadly pressure against the tent. In a statement, the investigative committee wrote, "It is precisely these small avalanches that could have caused compression injuries to people who were in the zone of their influence. The speed of their movement was sufficient to cause such injuries, and the distance over which they moved was great enough to explain the significant displacement of the tent." This may seem like a satisfying conclusion, but for many, this explanation felt far too simple, especially when compared to the official investigations of 1961 and 1962. Those reports meticulously examined every aspect of the tragedy, interviewing dozens of witnesses, poring over maps, and sending experts to the site. By contrast, the 2021 report completed its work in just 5 months. The team conducted no new research, sent no one to Dyatlov Pass, and failed to offer any compelling visual evidence. It reads like a summary of previous investigations with little added insight. Critics wasted no time voicing their frustration. Yelena Chuprova, the sister of hiker Yuri Yudin, complained that the new report offered closure in words only, not in truth. Many scientists and independent experts have expressed similar sentiments. They argue that the investigative committee ignored important details, including radiation traces found on some of the bodies, certain types of injury, missing body parts, and the eerie orange tint of some victims' skin. In 2021, a team of scientists revisited the site and replicated the conditions under which the hikers pitched their tent. Using handheld instruments, they measured the stability of the slope, and in the spring, they returned to search for traces of the avalanche. So far, their research has yet to reach a conclusion. As for the hikers' unusual injuries, maybe those will remain a mystery forever. Today, journalists, documentary filmmakers, and amateur sleuths from around the world revisit Dyatlov Pass. Each new book, film, or article promises answers, but always leaves more questions in its wake. We may never know exactly what happened to the hikers, but their story continues to captivate us. In a world where we often feel like we know everything, there's something refreshing, if unsettling, to not know the ending. The mystery endures, unsolved and unsettling, as if the mountain itself is guarding its secrets. In the remote wilderness of northwest Russia, shrouded in an ethereal silence, lies a place that sends shivers down the spine. It is here that amidst the snow-covered peaks and frozen lakes, one of the most perplexing mysteries of the 20th century unfolded. Today, the Dyatlov Pass is no longer just a remote stretch of frozen wilderness. It is a place of pilgrimage. A simple memorial stone stands near the site, engraved with the names of the 9 young hikers who lost their lives. Each year, adventurers and conspiracy seekers alike make the harsh trek to pay their respects, to stand where the mystery was born, and to feel the weight of unanswered questions. The tragedy has sparked endless fascination worldwide. Books, documentaries, podcasts, and films continue to retell the story, each searching for the elusive truth. Yet every theory only deepens the sense of unease. Was it nature's fury, human error, Or something darker that claimed the lives of 9 young explorers? Over 6 decades later, the mystery of Dyatlov Pass refuses to fade. The wind still howls across the mountain slopes, carrying with it whispers of that cold night in 1959. Whispers of fear, silence, and secrets that remain buried in the snow. Imagine, if you can, a group of 9 intrepid hikers, their laughter echoing through the snowy expanse as they journey into the heart of the Ural Mountains. Among them are experienced outdoorsmen, their knowledge guiding the group deeper into the rugged terrain. As days pass, the landscape transforms into a winter wonderland, untouched and pristine. Yet as the mercury dips and shadows lengthen, a sense of foreboding creeps upon them. On February 1959, as the group neared the summit of Kholat Shakal, a mountain peak near the Dyatlov Pass, a sudden avalanche caught them off guard. Trapped under tons of snow, their hopes of rescue dwindled with each passing moment. But fate had a cruel twist in store. When they finally managed to escape the icy grave, they found themselves facing a horrifying sight. Their tent was ripped to shreds, as if attacked by a wild animal. Driven by desperation, they fled into the night, seeking shelter from the relentless cold. Tragedy struck once again as 3 of the hikers perished in the freezing cold, their bodies discovered in a huddled mass, offering a haunting tableau of their final moments. Days turned into a week and hope began to fade. One by one, the remaining hikers succumbed to the harsh elements, their bodies found scattered around the mountainside, each bearing the mark of a struggle to stay alive. When the news of the tragedy reached Yuri, a local man who had accompanied the group part of the way, he was stunned. He recalled the group's high spirits during their shared trek, making the grim discovery of their lifeless forms all the more shocking. The official investigation into the deaths was equally baffled, with authorities attributing the deaths to unknown compelling circumstances. However, the families of the deceased demanded answers, leading to a second investigation that unearthed new details. The autopsy reports revealed a grim reality. Most of the hikers died from hypothermia, but some had suffered serious injuries, including a woman whose skull was fractured. Eyewitnesses came forward, sharing stories of the group's deteriorating mental state, with some even claiming to have seen strange lights and heard unsettling sounds in the days leading up to the tragedy. Despite these glimpses into the darkness that may have enveloped the group, many crucial questions remained unanswered. As the years rolled by, theories emerged, each attempting to shed light on the Dyatlov Pass incident. Some whispered of a 5th victim, lost and never found. Others spoke of a creature from the night, a beast that stalked the hikers, leaving its mark on their shattered tent and their broken bodies. But perhaps the most haunting theory of all was that of a secret military test, a chilling proposition that sent ripples of fear and uncertainty through the years. Today, the world remembers the Dyatlov Pass incident not just as a series of tragic events, but as a chilling enigma, a puzzle whose pieces refuse to fit. The memorial stone serves as a solemn reminder of the lives cut short, while the surrounding mountains stand as silent witnesses to the enduring mystery. For those who visit the site, the biting wind and the blanket of snow offer a haunting tableau of the past. They come seeking answers, perhaps, or maybe they're drawn to the very questions that have defied solution for over 6 decades. Whatever the reason, they stand where the young hikers once did, gazing at the snow-covered peaks and trying to comprehend the unexplainable. In the hushed stillness of the mountains, they listen intently, hoping to catch the whispers of the past. And as the sun dips below the horizon, casting long shadows across the frozen landscape, they ponder the darkness that may have fallen over the Dyatlov Pass all those years ago. What do you think happened at Dyatlov Pass? In the early hours of February 1959, 9 young lives were lost on that frozen slope, their final moments shrouded in fear and confusion. More than 6 decades later, the Dyatlov Pass incident remains one of the most haunting unsolved mysteries in modern history. Every new theory, whether avalanche, military secrecy, or something unearthly, only sharpens the questions instead of answering them. What force could drive experienced hikers to slash open their own tent, to flee half-dressed into a deadly night, and to suffer injuries that defy explanation? Was it the raw power of nature, the cruelty of man, or something that lies beyond our understanding? The truth remains buried beneath the snow of Kholat Shahul, the mountain of the dead. Yet the story refuses to die. It lingers in whispers of the wind, in the shadows of the Urals, and in the memories of those who still seek justice for 9 souls lost to the cold silence of the unknown. It is a tale as old as time, a group of friends setting off for an adventure, excited for the journey ahead. In the case of Yuri Krivonishenko, leader of the hiking group, this was his second time exploring the area. And for many of the group, it was a chance to escape the pressures of life back in the city. There was Rustem Sloboda, a medical student trying to find his way. Nikolai Thibault, a charismatic athlete whose girlfriend would soon become a famous ballerina. And then there was Lyudmila Dubinina, Zina Kolmogorova, and Rosta Masteriano, 3 friends whose close bond would be tested in the most unimaginable ways. Their plan was straightforward: hike through the scenic beauty of the Ural Mountains, taking in the stunning views and enjoying the camaraderie of their shared passion. But as the days passed and the group reached their final destination, Dyatlov Pass, their spirits lifted. They had made it. Here, nestled amidst snow-covered peaks, they set up camp, eager to rest their weary muscles and bask in the glow of their accomplishment. However, that night, a storm raged, whipping up fierce winds and blanketing the mountain pass in heavy snowfall. When it was over, the sky cleared, revealing a chilling sight. The temperature had plummeted to an unimaginable low of 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and in the heart of that icy expanse, huddled inside their tent, were the 9 hikers. That morning, something strange happened. The tent was found sliced open from the inside, and outside, scattered across the frozen ground, were the belongings of the 9 hikers, some fully clothed and some not. Some were lying haphazardly, while others were neatly arranged as if placed there intentionally. The discovery sent shockwaves through the small settlement of Vijay, where news of the missing hikers had reached. A search party was quickly organized, braving the harsh weather conditions to comb through the thick snowdrifts. When they finally located the bodies of the 9 hikers, what they found was nothing short of horrifying. 8 of the bodies were discovered near the tent, their faces pale and lifeless. One body, that of Yuri Krivonishenko, was found further away, almost as if he had been searching for help. Many of the bodies were half-dressed, some with only one shoe or a single mitten. And when examined more closely, their injuries seemed to tell a story of terror. One hiker had a large gash across their head, while another had multiple broken ribs. Some had severe frostbite, as if they had been exposed to the freezing temperatures for far too long. The official investigation that followed painted a picture of tragedy. The cause of death, it seemed, was hypothermia, brought on by the sudden onset of freezing temperatures and the hikers' inadequate clothing in the aftermath. Some had fled the tent in terror, while others had remained, seeking the comfort of their sleeping bags. The injuries, according to the report, were most likely caused by the hikers' own actions as they desperately tried to save themselves. But the families of the victims were not convinced. There were too many unanswered questions. Why did the hikers cut open their tent from the inside? Why were some fully clothed while others were not? And how did some sustain such horrific injuries? Theories abounded, ranging from the mundane to the bizarre. Some blamed an avalanche, while others pointed fingers at the military, suggesting that the hikers may have stumbled upon a secret test site and been eliminated to protect national security. Yet others whispered of something more sinister, perhaps a creature from the snowy wastelands, a Yeti, a humanoid wild man said to roam the mountains, preying on unsuspecting travelers. And so the mystery of Dyatlov Pass has endured for more than 6 decades, capturing the imaginations of countless people. Each new theory, whether avalanche, military secrecy, or something unearthly, only sharpens the questions instead of answering them. If you're still with me, stay tuned for more videos like this one. Thank you for watching.